Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EA Global Summit 2020. This is Nizam from the EA Global Summit organizing team. And here with us, we have Peter, the EA enthusiast and president of the Austrian Association of Software Industry. For most of us here, Peter needs no introduction. But yeah, he's the master of everything in Sparx EA. So we are all looking forward for this session. Peter, so he'll be presenting in this session about custom integrations using ProCloud Server. So the ProCloud Server from Sparx Systems is the integration API that lets EA to be connected to multiple tools. And this session is going to dive deep into how to implement custom integrations using ProCloud Server. So before quickly passing on to Peter for this great session, I would like to drop a note that if you have any questions or if you'd like to know more details, please do join us in our Teams collaboration room. So the link for which will be shared in the chat window. It's already in the chat window. If you haven't clicked it already, please do so during the session or after the session. And Peter and us will be there in the discussion room to give you more details as required. And if there is any immediate question that you would like to raise during the session, please do write it in the Teams or here, and we will request Peter to address them towards the end of his session. So thank you everyone for joining this, and thanks Peter once again, passing to you now.
So welcome also from my side. Thank you for joining this session. I'm really impressed of the short-term invitation and the huge attendance from your side. Of course, it will not only be about custom integration, it is all about integrations overall. So custom integration is only one part. And I will turn off the video now because just to be sure that you get all the messages I want to send because of network challenges maybe. So danger, this will be a deep tech session. So nothing, a little of modeling, but more about the deep tech behind it, how to get data in and out enterprise architect. First of all, I want to give you a short overview of possibilities that are around enterprise architect. And there are a huge number of possibilities to integrate with enterprise architect using Enterprise Architect itself, ProCloud Server technology, Prolaborate, and other integration possibilities. First of all, I will give you the first, the very traditional way of integrating, and very traditional was CSV import-export possibilities. A challenge with CSV was always that there was no diagram interchange. So it was very powerful for having hierarchical data. And if you want to see where it is, there is the publish button and CSV import export. And there is a very powerful specification editor where you can define it. So I have to switch to my model. That is a local one. And here we have a structure prepared with some 100 elements. And the CSV is a feature that we can use here. And you can define your own specification, and it was very powerful. It is still very powerful because you can preserve hierarchy and you can add all available fields and tagged values to that. And it's very good for importing and exporting a structure. So if you want to use such a structure, you can say export and you create, including subfolders and column names, the complete export in an XMI. In a CSV file, and the CSV file means you can open it with Excel, and to preserve hierarchy, it's using a generic way of preserving that kind of hierarchy. And if you have the GUID as a part of your CSV, then it is possible, GUID and the type, of course, then it's possible to regenerate and to resync also with existing models. So it's a very powerful option from the very beginning of Enterprise Architect, and it's of course still available. The second possibility is XMI. XMI is the standard format from the OMG and has different versions, and with the latest version there is also included diagram interchange. But what I really want to point out now is the new format XMI native that comes with Enterprise Architect 15 that allows to have a really, really fast performing XMI, proprietary XMI, but XMI interchange. And this is available in the export XML. And I want to give you a short comparison. What does it mean? So the traditional way is take XMI 2.1. I will name it that we can differentiate afterwards. So it's 2.1. In DeFi export, it follows the structures and the principles of the XMI, and so a lot of loops in the database are required. So, and with around about 600 elements, it takes some time to generate that file. And because that's not fun, Sparx invited the native format. And just to give you an idea about how fast native format could be, and native means just following the structure of the database. So if I click export, it's done. So that's the real difference about the native format and the structure of XMI. Of course, both is XML, both is readable, but if you just want to have a package that you want to transport from one enterprise architect to another enterprise architect, then the native format is a real winner. Additionally, with the latest version of Enterprise Architect, I mean 15.1, not 15.2, but since the 15.1 is also available, you have a nice possibility to transfer your entire project. As insiders may know that if you just have the XMI, it's the structure of the model, but it's not having the reference data with it. And now we have an option to use also the native XML format to export the entire project, including all the reference data. And of course, you can also import the complete project, including the reference data. So it's a very powerful option to have a readable format instead and the two-stage process, because if you want to make it on a different machine, then you don't have access maybe to the database with the project transferred is the traditional way. Now we have the native XML, including reference data, and that's very powerful to interchange data. Let's come back to the second. So that is what Enterprise Architect provides. And of course, there are a lot of other XML formats. Some of them are a little bit hidden. So if you want to import, there you can find out that there is a possibility with other XML formats you have never seen in help, like that one or that one, and other formats. So there is a huge work for interoperability also with other ecosystems, because Enterprise Architect wants to be everywhere where modeling is. And so we are able to integrate with other tools already on the UI level. With version 15, there comes another feature. The feature is a scripting-based feature. And of course, you can have add-in development for integration and synchronization of the data. But there's a nice feature that's called Data Miner. If I go to Data Miner, then you will see that there are three major possibilities to integrate data. One of the possibilities is to have a data miner that collects data from an Enterprise Architect repository. Another one is to go to ODBC, so meaning to any database management systems. And I have found a nice company called connectingsoftware.com with more than 400 connectors to everything that is not classical ODBC, but they make it ODBC. So that means if you want to access SAP, Exchange, whatever, then you can go to company like Connecting Software, and you have connection to any kind of data that fits to this ODBC path. Additionally, there is a way with file or URL where you can import in a new way Excel or JSON. So Excel, not only a stupid CSV list, but a structured Excel with more tabs and different data, including connectors, connector information, or JSON supporting also diagram interchange format. And we want to have a look at this one. For the data miner, this is the original example from the EA example, but the EA example is very huge, so I just exported it for our usage here. There are 2 sample files, and there is some explanation for it, and I have done the export already. So there is a JSON file, and we can have a look at it. So the JSON file, just to give you transparency what I'm doing. There is the JSON file, and I have no JSON editor, so but I can just open it with an editor. The JSON file is an XML without description. So there is a structure, there are the elements, first of all, there are the relationships between the elements, and additionally there is also the diagram, the views to these relations, including the positions where this should be placed. And it creates also the diagrams, and is also syncing if you have already that one. So a JSON file could contain more than just elements. Or at the second sample we will see later, maybe I go to it later just to show the difference. The idea of this data miner is that you have data miner connections, and there are patterns implemented already where you have this EA repository template, an ODBC template, and so on. And you have a data source connector, and you have a harvester. The harvester is not a real miracle, because there is some code. So if you want to see the code, we can also edit that one. And we see that the data miner manager is an extension of the API of Enterprise Architect, where you can navigate through this data and data structure and interpret it as you want. So it's a scripting way of loading the data. So therefore, it's no miracle, and it's using the Enterprise Architect API, but in a very structured way. So if I want to run it, I just have to go on the right mouse button and say Run Data Miner Processor. And what happens, it's doing what is written in this importer. And here we have already, I have to wait a little for the diagram. We have already the elements, and the diagram is rendered in background. And here now we can open it. And so it's a simple Akimate business model that is run that is created out of the JSON sample. So the data miner is very powerful because it allows any JSON structure to be imported, or any ODBC data source to be imported. For the other sample, there is this Excel file. The Excel file looks like that. So now that's the JSON file. I open the Excel file. The Excel file looks like that. It has 3 tabs: objects, links, and attributes. It's not normal data, but it has an object. It has the hierarchy. So we have a package with 2 classes. Then we have a generalization link between 2 elements, and then we have an attribute that is a tagged value in reality. And this kind of Excel can also be imported. You see, you have 3 different harvesters for the different tabs. And then, of course, there is again the script where we can look into it, what is done. We have this process action implemented, and for different data miner, we have different elements we want to generate. And at the end, there is a mapping to the type and the connections, and you can create and retrieve the data that is in this Excel in a very generic way. And what has to be done here, it also has to run the data miner processor, and it creates the model. And the model is in this sample, there is no diagram, but if we want to see a diagram, I just can add a class diagram. And we see the attribute already. I placed the classes. And the second one. And we see the relationship and the attribute that was in the Excel file. So the data miner capability makes the integration very easy. Of course, not everybody has to write the script, but you can have an easy access to that one with security rights. And the person who is just running this job just start the scripts or the process by run data miner processor, and it will work. So this is a very powerful option to integrate data with the data modeler, with the data miner. Sorry. So the next possible step, the next possibilities are, of course, MDG technologies. There is an MDG for Office as an example that allows to import Word or Visio and to export to PowerPoint and make a synchronization also with Excel in a little bit different way. Of course, there is MDG for doors as an example that's now deprecated because it's for the old doors, but it's still available. Then we have third-party implementations like for CodeBeamer. We have any other third-party implementation because MDG technology is a very powerful extension possibility for Enterprise Architect. The next step is the topic of the speech, to see what is in reality behind Enterprise Architect. In the past, it was very easy because Enterprise Architect comes with a local database. It's still available. This IP file and IPX file, or the Firebird embedded file is also a local database. Then there was a possibility to connect to any database management system like SQL Server, MySQL, or any other that is in our list. And this was the classical client-server structure. To support collaboration in teams cross boundaries, cross company boundaries, Sparx introduced the WAN optimizer in beginning, and later on the cloud services, and now the Sparx ProCloud Server. So Sparx ProCloud Server means that Enterprise Architect communicates using HTTP. So I can extend my presentation right now. You can use HTTP or HTTPS to communicate to the Sparx ProCloud Server, which itself communicate to the database management system, and that provides additional features like integrations. Before that, Sparx decided to use an open standard for interacting with models, and this open standard is OSLC, Open Service for Lifecycle Management. And therefore, because this is available, already third parties are using this technology. I want to name Tasto because this implementation is done already, and ArgoSense just started to provide this implementation also because they have a former integration to Enterprise Architect also, but really prefer the server way of integration. So these are additional possibilities. And out of the box, there is integrations available also from Sparx. Currently, there are standard integrations available for application lifecycle management, now owned by Micro Focus, I think, formerly known as HP Quality Center. Then there is a Chess integration, and Chess is originated in the past is also based on OSLC, but with some extensions. And there, that means you have an integration to Doors NG, you have integration to Rational Rhapsody Design Management, Team Concert Change, and Rational Quality Manager. There is an integration to Jira and Confluence, Team Foundation Server, RIG, ServiceNow, Autodesk, Bacilla, Salesforce, SharePoint, Dropbox, and any other Enterprise Architect models. So these are the standard integrations that are provided by Sparx, and they contain a specific kind of data. As an example, if you want to integrate with Jira, then you have to define your own filters, and the integration is using the filters as a base. If you use Enterprise Architect, of course, that's the most powerful integration because you can use a filter, you can navigate through the model, you can just browse it, and so on and so forth. So it depends a little on that what is implemented as a common sense for these different applications, and there will some additional possibilities come in the future, and if you're happy with them, that's fine. But Sparx is, as always, tries to provide open APIs. And so they also provide a new interface since ProCloud Server 4.1.40, I think, something like that. That's named Custom Integrations. And what behind the scenes, there is also a thing that is not integrations, that is called services. And one of the implementation of services that comes with Sparx ProCloud Server are, as a sample, the translation services that allows you to translate your models into foreign languages and switch between the different languages. And here, two different language provider or translation provider are integrated. It's the Microsoft Cognitive Translator or Google Translator, and provided through the integrations interface to the ProCloud Server to Enterprise Architect. And because, again, open-minded, there is also a possibility to write your own custom services. These custom services, you have to write a script to start it because there is no button, or you can, of course, write your own add-in to start this custom service, whatever it does. And yes, first, before we go to the custom integrations, and I explain a little bit more about custom integration and how the source codes are looking like, I want to show how the principal behavior of this is. Maybe let's start from the configuration point. So I switch to my server. My server is currently my notebook, but yes, sometimes things are vice versa. And here I have this ProCloud Server configuration. And the principle of the ProCloud Server configuration is that you have so-called database managers. And the database manager is a connection to a database. And what is necessary for having an integration is that you have the Pro features activated, or at least a token for each integration you want to have. For the integration point, it is a TCP/IP logic. So there is ports, and you have, of course, servers. That means also that you can run each integration on another server if you wish. In my place, every integration is running on the same machine. And as an example, I have here the Jazz integration to Doors, and I allow that this integration is used by the following ProCloud Server repositories. That also means that currently it is only possible to use ProCloud Server integrations from ProCloud connections. So because you need the database manager, and you assign the integration to one of the existing ProCloud services. And I say, okay, this Doors integration is available for my EA Global repository, and my custom integration is also available for EA Global, or my Dropbox integration as another sample is also available there. This is an admin thing. So once again, it's not a thing that typical modelers will see, but you I think in this session you should, because I said it's a deep tech session. And if you want to see as an example how this translation is defined, we can jump into the configuration. And there you see that the provider is a translation provider. It's using a DLL in behind and having two APIs integrated where this translation take place. If we jump to Doors as an example, I use Daniel's installation. Thank you for that. I'm sure he's here. Thank you for that. It's still available. I use the Doors integration from Daniel to the requirements management, and that's just the configuration. What I do allow is to create items also indoors or modified post discussion, really depending on that what the backend provides. What is also an important remark, this integration will always start if ProCloud Server starts. So if you define a new integration, it's necessary to reboot or restart. Reboot is not correct. To restart the ProCloud service, that these integrations are available. It looks a little bit powerful at the end, but typically you just need the 3 or 4 parameters to set, depending on your ecosystem. For Enterprise Architect, with Enterprise Architect, this integration is this base URL is just a model name as an example. just to let you know. So if your ProCloud server is available on localhost 804, then this base URL is the model name behind. So how are these integrations now in Enterprise Architect? So I will define a new area. So make a new view where I place my integrations. Maybe also with a diagram. I take a custom diagram because it's I don't know what content is coming on, and there. So maybe I close. No, under specialized there is a button that's called System Integration, and there is a specific editor where you can define and configure the mappings. As an example, if you have custom integration, Dropbox and Enterprise Architect activated, then you can define the field mapping between the types that are provided by the provider and the chest type, as an example, to the type that is provided by Enterprise Architect. And it's also possible to map it to a custom or a different tool set. So it's a really powerful mapping possibility that Enterprise Architect provides in this case. So what happens if you navigate to the integration, then the list of possible and configured integrations raise up. And I said before, I want to use the chess integration, and I have defined an integration called doors01. And here we have different repositories. I will take the RM repository, and so we can navigate through that what is provided. In a folder can be, or there is a possibility there is already a requirement, but I can navigate deeper and see a list of possible requirements that are coming from the doors backend. And what happens is that these are elements and placeholders, and we have all the properties that are provided here in a list. If you want to make a placeholder element in Enterprise Architect, you can choose, okay, this one I want to model. Then you create the so-called local element. And I can also add this local element already to a diagram. So I'm okay. I hope my diagram is not available. Then I will do it later. And I create this element now as a placeholder it's called external reference, and it is here. In my integrations package, this external requirement is placed. And if I place an external element on my diagram, then you can see what's the containment and where it's coming from with a small icon. Of course, you can change the size and so on, and you see all this external link information that you can navigate and jump to the original source. What you also can see that this SS integration, meaning Sparx Systems Integration, has a prefix to the link. This is also a thing that you can configure that has to do with this mechanism, how these elements are named and how how the unique identifiers look like if you would have different aspects in behind. So that's the idea, the principal idea, that you create local placeholder elements for the elements you really want to use. And of course, if you come to your modeling, then you just take whatever your model consists. So I take from the UML my behavior diagram. Let's say create account, just as an idea, and then I can make relationships to this, making a realized relationship as an example. And what is very important, if this one is updated, because this can be done automatically, then this link is not lost. This is a very important information because we created the link from the element, from my design element to that one. That's very important that you have the right directions, not to lose any connections. That's the principle behind it. Of course, if you want to create more elements at once, This is also possible to create, as an example, this kind of free elements. You create free elements as a placeholder in Enterprise Architect, and it places it where you are. So please be careful. Then you have this placeholder elements here. To have just another sample, we will go as an example to Dropbox. There is also a connection. In this way, we need an OAuth 2 authentication. So we go to a process that allows an authentication against Dropbox. I think my Dropbox account is this one. And now I allow that Enterprise Architect is accessing Dropbox. So stupid if you don't know your credentials anymore. Bad luck. Then you cannot connect. So you'd see typically I have not used Dropbox entering account, but let's have another because we want to go for custom integration. For custom integration, I have already an integration that is a sample where you create your own menu with your own menu query, and then you have the same elements. As an example, there is this example service where you can also open in an example domain. And the same principle, you can create your local element as a placeholder, and then you have your own element that is here created as item 2. And if you go to the integrations, and now we take item 2, the only difference to that you have your own icons and visualizations that you can identify the elements. And you have, of course, things like nodes and so on. But how to write such a custom integration? So let's go back to my overview screen. So we go to the overview screen. So we go back to the overview screen and see this custom integrations path. And I have just reverse engineered the integration interface, and you see it's just implementation. So there is this integration plugin, the sample, and here is the interface for it. It is not that complex as it may look. In reality, it's a very simple interface. So let's go through this interface. First of all, we need to load the configuration possibilities. So you can also use all of the configuration parameters that you have been able to set in the. So I go back to the settings that you can see it. So every configuration parameter that is able to be set here, you can of course use in your custom integration. Of course, you can also misuse them. So the good news is that all the things that persons can enter here, if you want to define your own custom integration, you define your custom integration provider, and then the only difference to the others is that you have to define your DLL path, where the integration is, where you have defined this interface. And so all of these attributes can be used in your integration. Then there is a possibility that you implement the authorization. Currently in this sample, it's not implemented, so no authorization is required. And the first step, and maybe if you have been in the past an modeler, implementer of add-ins for Enterprise Architect, then you will already see similar things that you have seen in Enterprise Architect already. So in this sample, on level 0, there are 3 menu items added. Just to give you a back link, so on the level 0, there are 3 menu items added. These are the 3 menu items. Each menu item got an ID, whatever it is just a string. It should be unique. Because the next time, if you go through the menu list, it checks if you are on level C2 or any other level, then it verifies what are the elements below. So if I choose the first one, example menu item 1, then it will provide an example menu query 1 and query 2. So this is the logic of building such a structure. So that means if I choose a level 1, then I have now 2 elements to be chosen from that menu. So once again, menu 1 provides 2 submenus. Menu 2 provides only 1. It's called query free. So if I go to the external data and I take menu 2, then I will have query free as possible provider. This is the menu structure. Of course, in each menu, there could be items. So in this implementation, items are only available after query. And there is only 2 hierarchy levels available in this sample. So we have level 1 and level 2 and nothing else. So that's, but of course, you can have an implementation for level 3 and so on. And of course, you can create this information out of a database. I have started already a sample with this database integration where I have done this with Visual Studio. And here I just went through a list. I created the list of classes and used as the ID, I used the Enterprise Architect GUID and the name of the classes. So this is just an easy way that you can, of course, and see that all the power of C# is here available. And if it's a database, then you can use a database. If you have an ODBC data source, or if you have, as I mentioned before, connecting software, then this could be the hierarchy of your Exchange server where you navigate through. So let us go through. So this is the menu. And the next is the item list. So if I decided to have elements already, then I get item lists. And you have seen that the level was project 1, but the ID of the items was the query. And if I choose query 1, then it could have submenus, but it also could have already items. So both methods are called by the integrations, by these external data integrations. So if I choose now level 1, menu 1, then I get 2 items. And these 2 items are these 2 items. The minimum requirement is ID and name. And as you may see, there is already an issue here. It's name. It should be alias, but we can fix this later on. So we can add various attributes, whatever you want. And if these attributes names are mapping to the names that are in Enterprise Architect, then it will be mapped to the original elements of Enterprise Architect. If not, then automatically tagged values are created. Of course, you can override, and this is also the power of this external data, that you can override and configure a different mapping. So we provide specific types, and there is a field mapping. And what you can see is that if it's nodes, then it's mapping to the Enterprise Architect field nodes. If it's a custom property, then typically you will use a tagged value. Modified date could be an Enterprise Architect field, but in this case, it's also a tagged value. Name is mapped only to name. So it's really possible that the user that uses the integration later on makes a different mapping to that what you have provided in your implementation. So that is the idea of getting items. Just going to another sample, for query 2, we have only 1 item, and for query 3, we have also 1 item. So if I choose here query 2, then I have only 1 item. If I go to menu 2, query 3, I have also 1 item, because this is implemented here in this custom integration. If you later on want to use that item, so not only to get the list, so this was the list, if you want to have the full properties of the items, then you have the possibility to take 1 item. So the unique identifier is the ID of the item. And then you can have the properties, a full property list, maybe beyond that what we have seen before. So this property X epsilon Z have not been a part of the list because it's not visualized in the integration. So this list is a stable one. I think you have a possibility to have a GUID and a remote ID that is a unique one, but you have not custom properties. But the element can consist of custom properties too, and therefore you can have this method get item where you have access to your additional properties that are not relevant in the list. So for item nodes, of course, item nodes is a specific handler and item discussion. Why is this important? Because as you have seen in Enterprise Architect, this discussion capability is very important. And so the possibility to create an item, to modify an item that is in the remote, and to post discussions to the system that is remote is a very powerful feature for collaboration, and it will become more and more important also in enterprise architect scenarios. So to have these item discussions, we can have a list of discussions around it. And if you want to post a new item, then of course you have to implement the code to post. If you make an update and so on and so forth. So that is really straightforward. But for the major features to import elements from foreign systems, you have to implement 3 methods. One is this get menu. So let's go this get menu list, then get item list, then the get item. So these are the 3 major things to be implemented. In below, you can also see the default mapping. So it's a recommendation to have a default mapping for users that don't want to change the mappings. So we can define a default mapping for this editor of the integrations. And of course, you can define also your types and fields for that types. Last but not least, there is also an icon that you have seen, a custom icon. And for future use, there is also a generic request. This one is an outlook also for custom services where you have the possibility to define your own methods and your own method handlers. But this was a little bit out of scope and out of time for today. So let me sum up. Last but not least, if we want to have a really not an element related integration, but a web-based integration, then of course you can use partly WebEA, but you can also use the power of Prolaborate. With Prolaborate, you have a different way of integration, meaning it's a live integration where you have as a part of your ecosystem a window, a web part in Confluence. I can open this here, where you see within Confluence you have a part of Prolaborate embedded, and this is only possible in web ecosystems, and it's a very powerful possibility if you want to have a live integration between your content management systems or whatever you use Confluence for, and your models. So this is the latest possibility of integration that is not based on elements, but based on visual integration between such ecosystems. Okay, as time run by, so it's only 1 minute to go. I'm happy to see you later on in Teams, where I can and will ask your questions. And of course, I will also provide the latest version. What I have done in the meanwhile is, of course, everything that I have produced in Enterprise Architect is available also for WebEA, and so you have the possibilities and see the overview also in a web session, and you can of course navigate as we have done it in Enterprise Architect. We can navigate also through WebEA now. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. It was a very interesting and a very deep delve down session. So it was quite informative. I think this would serve as a reference for a number of use cases later on. We have a few questions and discussions. One of them is asking about any ways to export data to business users and get it imported back to EA. So, I mean, the question is in the Teams. Maybe you can provide a detailed response post the session. I think we are in nearly time. But there is a detail, like there's an elaborate question. Someone who is like, this is Archo, and I think he's been using MDG offices and he's a regular Sparx user. So he's got a question. Maybe we can have a detailed response to him in the Teams channel as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because a short answer does not really help. I try to answer it in a good way and longer in the team session. Okay.
Thank you. And yeah, so thank you everyone for joining this session. We have shared the Teams link in the chat window, and I'm doing it once again now. So please feel free to join the team session where we'll have Peter and other EA practitioners as well who could add more to your discussions or respond to your questions. So I'm sharing this link once again, and thank you everyone for joining.